All right, today we're diving deep into a viral threat that's causing huge problems for cattle farms all over the world. We're talking about lumpy skin disease. It's a massive economic threat, and we're about to find out exactly why.
Think about this for a second. How can one tiny little insect bite bring an entire herd of cattle to its knees? It sounds crazy, right? But that single question, it really gets to the core of just how dangerous this virus is.
So, to really get a handle on this, we gotta start with the basics. What exactly is lumpy skin disease?
Okay, so the official definition from our source material points to an infectious disease that shows up in a few really distinct ways. First, you've got a high fever. Then, something called lymphadenitis, which is just a fancy way of saying the lymph nodes get super swollen. And then, of course, there's the most obvious sign, these awful, painful bumps that pop up all over the animal's skin.
The bad guy in this story is something called the Neethling pox virus. And what's kind of fascinating is that it's a Capri pox virus, which makes it a close relative of sheep and goat pox. But here's the kicker. Look where it hangs out. Nasal secretions, saliva, milk, blood, you name it. It's in pretty much every fluid the animal produces. And that, right there, is a massive clue as to why this thing is so good at spreading.
All right, so we know where the virus is hiding. The next big question is, how does it jump from one animal to the next and create a huge outbreak?
Well, the main way it spreads is actually pretty straightforward and really effective. It all starts with one sick animal. An insect, think a mosquito or a fly, comes along and takes a bite, sucking up the virus along with the blood. Then, that same bug flies over to a perfectly healthy animal and bites it. It's basically acting like a tiny contaminated needle. And boom, just like that, the virus has a new home.
And you don't have to take my word for it. Right here, in the source material, you can see the term insect vector is circled. This isn't just a guess, this is the main superhighway for the virus. This whole process, with biting insects spreading it around, is exactly why lumpy skin disease can tear through a herd so fast.
But hold on, it's not just the insects. A brand new calf can get sick just by drinking milk from its infected mom. And since the virus is in saliva and snot, things like shared water troughs, they can become total hotspots for infection. Even just direct contact between animals can spread it, though that's a little less common.
Okay, so we've covered how it gets around, but what does it actually look like when an animal gets sick? What are those first telltale signs a farmer needs to be watching for?
This is where it gets tricky. Before you see anything on the outside, the virus is already waging a war inside the animal. Just a few days after infection, this thing called viremia kicks in. That's when the virus just goes nuts, multiplying like crazy in the bloodstream. From there, it takes a couple of weeks for it to spread out and set up shop in the skin and organs. And that right there is the key. You're looking at a 2 to 4 week incubation period. Let that sink in. An animal can be walking around, looking perfectly healthy, but actually be infected and spreading the virus for almost a month before anyone has a clue. You can see why trying to contain this is such a nightmare. And then, it all hits. It usually starts with a fever that just won't break. The animal stops eating. You'll see discharge from its nose and eyes. And then come the really obvious signs. Those signature, painful, hard lumps start erupting all over its body, and you can literally see the swollen lymph nodes. It's just a miserable, awful experience for the animal.
You'd think it couldn't get any worse than that, right? But honestly, as bad as those first symptoms are, the real damage, the stuff that's truly devastating, often comes from what happens next.
And once again, we can look right at the source material to see what that danger is. You see these words circled? Mastitis, abortion, infertility. To a farmer, those aren't just medical terms, they mean total disaster. We're not just talking about one sick cow anymore, we're talking about something that can completely wipe out a person's livelihood.
The complications are just brutal. Those painful lumps can make an animal too sore to even walk. Bulls can become infertile. Pregnant cows lose their calves. Mastitis means no more milk. The animal's hide is ruined, making it worthless, and sometimes it all ends with a fatal case of pneumonia. It's like the disease attacks the animal's health and its economic value from every possible angle.
So you've got this incredibly destructive disease. The obvious question is, how do you fight back? How do you stop an outbreak in its tracks, or even better, prevent it from ever starting?
Okay, your first line of defense is all about strict biosecurity. That means getting rid of any dead animals safely and hygienically. It means disinfecting the entire farm. And absolutely crucial, you have to get the insect population under control. You got to break that cycle of transmission. On a bigger scale, it also means banning cattle imports from places where there's an outbreak.
But here's the thing. All of those measures are really important for containing the disease, but they're reactive. You're doing them after the problem has already started. If you want to get ahead of it, the single best, most powerful tool we have is vaccination.
So it turns out there are a couple of main options for vaccines. It's pretty interesting. You've got one made from the sheeppox virus, which actually gives 2 years of protection against lumpy skin disease. Then there's the other type, which is made directly from the needling strain, the actual LSD virus itself.
And here's the number that really matters. 3 years. That needling strain vaccine gives a solid 3 years of protection. That kind of long-lasting immunity is an absolute game changer. It means you can actually manage and prevent this disease in your herd for the long haul.
So all of this leaves us with one last big question. When you think about how devastating the complications are and how insanely hard it is to stop an outbreak once it starts, is it really enough to just sit back and treat the symptoms as they appear? Or is being proactive, with things like vaccination and insect control, the only way we can actually win this fight?